Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Welcome once more to another live stream of Alexandra Mayers Live. Tonight is story time. Not my story, but the story of this lovely woman over here, Shelley Lubben. I'm going to do a reading of chapters 12 and 13, along with a bit of commentary in regards to the chapters from her book, The Truth Behind the Fantasy of Porn, The Greatest Illusion on Earth. And before we begin, just very quickly, I do want to note that her critics, especially her most vocal and adamant critics over the years, are individuals who are linked directly to organized crime groups that have the agenda of profiting from sex trafficking rings that cater specifically to pedophiles. I feel like that's something that everyone out there needs to know when it comes to the individuals out there who, even after her death, still try to discredit her work and her message. So let's go ahead and begin. Chapter 12, Human Hell. Harder! F me harder! I viciously screamed back. The vulgar words shot out of my mouth as I was forcefully and anally penetrated by a brutal male performer. When screaming wasn't enough to endure the pain, I stuffed another man's penis into my mouth like a human pacifier. The sucking helped relieve the pain. Breathing deeply through my nostrils, the stench of bodily fluids filled my burning lungs. And before I continue, if you're curious about previous chapters that I've read along with my thoughts on those chapters, you can go over to my YouTube account, Alexandra Mayers, and look for the playlist pertaining to this particular book. As you heard from the first page of chapter 12, this book can get a little bit vulgar, so if you're particularly sensitive, this is not the stream for you. But it's important for people to understand and hear Shelley Lubben's perspective when it comes to the adult entertainment industry, because it's the truth. It's the truth through her eyes. And quite often, people who tell the truth in life are oppressed and suppressed and discredited and lied about and even killed. Rotten, dirty, foul anal smells. I was in a human hell. I couldn't get out of it. There was no crying aloud. I saw what happened to other girls who cried and wrecked scenes. I wasn't going to get yelled at, or worse, punched in the face. Besides, this was my chance to prove to the world that I was the best. So I took the stabbing pain, hard, fast, and furious. I screamed myself through the violent thrust. F me, F me, I yelled louder. F them, I thought. No damn man could ever hurt me. I swore it with every violent thrust. Nothing they could do to me would have an effect on me. Filthy wild pigs. They were nothing but poles I used to pay my bills. Gritting my teeth in denial, the powerful lies in my heart repeated to the slapping sound of each violent thrust. Slap, slap, slap. Take it, Shelley. Take the pain. Show them you can take it. Breathe. Just breathe, Shelley. Oh God, I cried out in pain. Hell no, I told myself. I'm not going to let these assholes see me suffer. So I hid the excruciating pain by pretending it was pure pleasure. But it was pure hell. With 6 men penetrating me in every hole and way possibly imaginable, I became sicker and more twisted. When I became too weak to endure the pain, Satan himself entered me to give me unlimited strength. My green eyes became black and dilated. A hellish look on my face, I snarled into the camera. Then the male pigs pulled out of me one by one and sprayed their liquid filth all over my red pointed face. A mouthful of bitter fluids and feces. I pretended to love every nauseating minute of it. Oh yeah, baby, I love it. I lied through my tightly clenched teeth. The scene ended with the final guy who could barely squeeze out a drop. What a pig. Someone threw me some baby wipes and told me what a good job I did. Wiping off the goo from my nose, mouth, and eyes, the bitter taste from the male pig stuck to the bottom of my throat. Vodka, I thought. I need vodka now. I lifted myself to go to the bathroom, but when I sat up, the pain shot throughout my body. I grabbed a baby wipe and gently reached around to clean my red, swollen, ballooned ass. Damn, that hurt, I cursed. Hobbling toward the shower, someone was using it. Great, I thought. I'm the one with a face full of glop, and some male pig beat me to the shower. I grabbed some more baby wipes and headed to the room where my bags were instead. That wasn't so bad after all, now was it, Roxy? Said a male performer while I wiped the goo off my face. Go to hell, I told him. That night, I went home and smoked some weed and played the Ouija board to relax. When I asked my spirit guide what his name was, he spelled out JesusChrist. So, that was chapter 12. For those of you who are not familiar with who Shelley Lubben is, because I know I've picked up some new viewers lately, she was best known as being a Christian anti-porn activist, but more importantly than anything, she was a friend to many people. She was a kind ear who listened when you needed somebody to talk to. She was an activist when it came to women's rights. She was a lot of things. She realized a lot of things about the adult entertainment industry that even some of the most prominent anti-porn groups today don't dare touch. Okay? Because it's dangerous to talk about some of the things that she spoke about, especially towards the end of her life. From my perspective, she only really made two mistakes. Mistake number one was bringing the story of her daughter into the equation. I never agreed with that. When I was recruited at one point to speak against her, which in hindsight I shouldn't have done, but if I hadn't, I wouldn't have learned the truth later on about the people who were against her or who are against her and why they're against her. They were against her because she realized that there's a tremendous amount of people with the agenda to harm minors within the adult entertainment industry. That's the reality. So that was one mistake. Her other mistake was believing that she could save women from the adult entertainment industry. You can't. If someone's meant to go into that world, then they do. What you can do is educate an individual who goes into that world what it really is and what they should do to be able to leave with their sanity and their health and just with their life. But can you save anybody from that world? No. Because the only person who can save anybody is themselves. That's it. So now let's go into chapter 13. And just anyone who's in the chat at the end of this stream, I'll look at the chat, but not while I'm in the midst of this, okay? And make sure that you do go over to Amazon.com and either purchase Shelley Lubben's book. If you have a Kindle membership, it may be included. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure where the proceeds of the book go at this point in time because Shelley Lubben passed away, but it's worth the read. And if you know anyone who's a young man or a young woman who's contemplating going into the adult entertainment industry, recommend this book to them. Okay? Chapter 13. Last Chance, Final Act. As the days grew deadlier and the nights grew darker, I knew something was very wrong with me. I went from performing in girl-girl scenes to performing in brutal rape scenes within months. Every minute was pure hell, and yet I thrived in the darkness. It had become my comforter, a hiding place for all of my ugliness. 6 years of performing in strip clubs, I felt at ease in the dark. It also empowered me. A powerfully dark woman, I could slip into any character, from victim to abuser. I could walk into a room as an angel of light, or I could dominate a soul and torture it. I could pretend to be a glamorous porn star and love every minute of the abuse, or act as the abuser and forcefully destroy my victims. Porn was the perfect place for me to act out my diverse abilities. Pornographers loved it. In fact, the darker I became, the richer pornographers became. As I continued to make harder and grosser porn, I transformed from victim into abuser. In my professional life, I began to act out like a man and abuse women on camera. And that's very common. A lot of times victims do become abusers themselves. With a strapped-on dildo, I did to women exactly what men had done to me. I even knew how to selfishly stroke myself like a man. All those years in prostitution watching male pigs paid off. The men in porn were even worse pigs, ejaculating themselves on any weak woman in any sacred place on her body. I acted out in revenge, the very thing I hated, a male pig. I also abused men any chance I was given. In my private life, I had several male slaves who took care of me. I never once paid my electric bill during the last few years of my sex career. My slaves took care of things like that. I didn't even pump my own gasoline. Everywhere I went, I dominated men and told them what to do. It was as if no man could say no to me. In my professional life, I continued to war with men in front of the camera. Every movie I made became a combat zone, and I was determined to conquer. I was relentless. I even demanded movies be made in my apartment where I could control the atmosphere. With the Ouija board by my side, demons in every corner and inside of me, I had full reign over my victims. I thought I was in total control of the darkness. I was not. Unfortunately, when no one was looking, of course, I fell apart. Tormented by demons every night, I lay on my bed for hours and listened to their vulgar and hateful words. I was so tormented that whenever I went outside and there was a full moon, the face on the moon cursed me and told me it hated me. I thought it might have been the drugs and alcohol, but when I asked people around me to tell me what they saw, they turned to me in fear and asked me if I had been playing with the Ouija board again. I opened up a demonic world I wasn't prepared for, and Satan wanted my life for it. I cried out to God over and over to save me from Satan and myself, but God didn't seem to answer. I couldn't understand why God would not rescue me. I never doubted God or who Jesus was at the entire time. The entire time, let me reread that. I never doubted God or who Jesus was the entire time I was in the sex industry. But I doubted God's love for me. How could God allow so many bad things to happen if he was a God of love? Blinded by the lies of pornography and Satanism, I continued on into the darkness. We all did. A world of fraud and wooden nickels. We ignored the obvious. Glamorous porn stars were jaded drug addicts. Friendly pornographers were machines of cruelty. Sexy purple couches were discolored beds of disease. Bathrooms were stations of human filth. Nothing was sacred in porn. Everything was diseased, destroyed, and damned. We were children of wrath, gratifying our sin natures with no thought of consequences. Some of us died in our ignorance. Some of us were waiting to die. And then it was my turn. And I'm going to stop there because I was saying that there were two mistakes that Shelley Lubben made, but there's a third. Here's a third. But toward the end, she was addressing the issue, and that this particular issue was in part what I believe created more critics of hers than she probably normally would have had. When it comes to the adult entertainment industry, you can not only blame the pornographers or the directors or the producers or the distributors or the pimps, which, I mean, really the porn industry is just a front for the pimps, truthfully. You can't only blame the machine that is the adult entertainment industry. You need to also blame the parents of the performers. Yeah. Because if it weren't for them, there would be no adult entertainment industry. Most of the people who go into that world end up there because they don't have anywhere else to go. They end up there because they grew up in environments that were very abusive, be it physically or psychologically and or spiritually, to where they are seeking validation and attention and acceptance. A lot of times, performers go in that world, realize it's not for them, and they try to go home, and their families don't take them back. So when you look at an adult entertainer, you are looking in actuality at their parents' failures. You are looking at the symptom of a big problem within their family. That's what you're really looking at. But nobody really wants to talk about that. No one really wants to, because it just shows how much of a failure quite a bit of our society in actuality is. So I'm just going to continue. The clock struck 10 and I felt it. A tiny bump on my labia. I wondered what it could be. Of course I ignored it like I ignored everything else in my life. Ignorance is bliss in the porn industry. I was with a married couple that night. They saw one of my movies and requested time with me. A private date with a porn star. As I walked out of the bathroom and adjusted my panties to hide my newly discovered bump, I requested the lights be dimmed. I really wasn't interested in frightening the young married couple who hired a prostitute for the first time. Nobody needed to know about my little bump but me. A week later, I was abruptly awakened by a stinging between my legs and a high fever. Rolling out of bed, my lower back hurt terribly. What is wrong with me? I thought. Still drunk from the night before, I sluggishly walked over to the bathroom, where I looked into the mirror. In shock, I stared at an image of me with cracked lips and red sores. I looked like a monster. As I swallowed back the shock, my throat stung. A closer look into the mirror, I opened my mouth to examine my sore throat and discovered a huge quarter-sized red sore on the back of my throat. "What is that?" I blurted out. I pulled back my lips, and red sores were everywhere in my mouth. I was horrified. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what it was. This is bad, I thought. I peeled off my panties to look for possible further damage. Fluid-filled blisters were everywhere. I grabbed my hand-held mirror to look from behind. Oh my God, I thought. Blisters were everywhere on my vagina and anus. I didn't dare touch myself lest they get on my hands. I stood up, mystified and in awe. Nothing like this had ever happened to me. I threw on some clothes, jumped in the car, and drove down to the nearest medical clinic. When it was finally my turn to be examined, the insensitive Indian doctor exclaimed, "Oh my, you have huppies." "What the hell is huppies?" I demanded to know. He explained to me I had a bad case of genital herpes, a non-curable disease, and took a sample of my blood for more testing. I was dumbfounded. I couldn't believe it. If I scared the doctor with my herpes, it must be really bad. Oh my God, I thought again. I have an infectious, non-curable disease. An evil laugh interrupted my shocking thoughts, and a low voice spoke to me. "No one will love you now. You are nothing but an ugly monster. No one will want you. You might as well kill yourself." Yeah, I nodded in my head. I should just kill myself. That day, I drove home and took over 30 prescription pills. This time, I was serious. My life was a wreck. I had nothing to live for. Everyone hated me. Nobody loved me. My parents didn't care. God didn't care. Why should I care? I thought. And I overdosed again. Only this time, I suffered through it alone in the darkness, with a pack of demons by my bed crossing their fingers. It would finally be over. Die, Shelley. Just die. We hate you. You are worthless. You are a piece of shit. Nobody wants you. God hates you. Just die. The evil voices hissed at me all night long. But somehow, I woke up, and then I disappeared. I quietly left the porn industry forever. I stopped taking calls. I stayed away from clubs and parties. I pretended like it never happened. And that's what a lot of women who leave do. They pretend like it never happened. You know, if they're able to, they change their hair color or they move to another area, go by a different name, start over. What a lot of people don't understand is that even though it's easier to just start over, for some of us who know what the porn industry is, we can't, because we know that nothing will ever change if you just keep your mouth shut. Some people are like, oh, people who speak out about the negatives in the industry, they just are living in the past and they want attention, or blah, 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 blah. One thing Shelley Lubben was known for saying is, the last thing I want to do is talk about porn. And people mocked her for saying that, but she was honest. And I know, because the last thing I want to be talking about is porn. But I know I have to, because I know I was called to. And for those of you out there who have mocked me over the years, or who are mocking me right now, because I'm not looking at the chat right now, keep mocking. Keep laughing. Keep laughing. Because you have to walk in a person's shoes to understand something like this. And if you're void of compassion to even attempt to empathize with something like this, then really you probably you probably need to try to live as long as possible, because after your life you're going to be going to a place that's very, 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 very bad. So to continue, with no other options available to me, I went back to prostitution, where I could at least use a condom. Nobody would have to know I had herpes. That would remain my little secret. I called up old tricks and was on my way to work when a voice interrupted my thoughts. Shelley, you're going the wrong direction. And I'm going to stop for those of you, again, who haven't listened to the other chapters of this book. Shelley wasn't only in the adult entertainment industry as a legal porn star, she also was in that world as an illegal prostitute, and she even graduated to becoming a illegal pimp at one point. So a lot of people do like to say that she didn't know what she was talking about entirely, because she wasn't in the public legal adult entertainment industry for very long. But she knew the ins and outs of that world very, very, very well. Probably better than the majority of the anti-porn activists out there, who are only saying what they're saying because they're trying to get rich on donations. Because that's what it is. The anti-porn industry is an industry. The anti-porn activists, it's an industry that is completely dependent upon the porn industry. They don't really have any desire to stop the porn industry. And I'm not anti-porn. I'm anti-porn that's not made ethically. The adult entertainment industry could change. There's people within that world who do make the effort to try to change it. But there's just so many people in that world to where really they're just using pornography as a front for whatever their organized crime activity is, that I just really don't know. I don't know. And nowadays, there's literally an industry that is feeding off of drawing minors into the adult entertainment industry, not just as performers, but as clientele. So I don't know. The whole political system within the United States of America, worldwide really, would have to change in order to create an ethical adult entertainment industry. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. So to continue. I felt a very serious warning wash over me as I continued to drive on the 60 freeway heading west to Los Angeles. Stop! The voice boomed in my head. Tears filled my eyes and I argued back. God, I don't want to go back. I hate prostitution, but you're not helping me. Stop, the voice boomed again. I couldn't shake the awful feeling that something very bad, something worse than what I could ever imagine, was about to happen. I gulped down some Jack Daniels to ease my anxiety. I put a cassette tape to drown out the voice. Everything will be okay, I reassured myself. A sudden crash flipped my car into the air, and I saw the road flip upside down and around while I watched my life flash before my eyes. My car landed perfectly right side up. In shock, I grabbed the rearview mirror. No blood on my face. I looked down. No blood on my knees. I looked to the side. The car door was smashed in. I turned my head. The back window was shattered. Everything was crushed except me. I didn't have a scratch. I crawled out of my window and ran as fast as I could, in shock. I looked behind me to see police lights driving up to the wreckage. I motioned to a driver to pull over and pick me up. I told him to take me home. He wanted to take me to the hospital. I told him my daughter was home alone and I had to get her. I lied. As we drove away, I watched the view in the mirror of black and white police cars pulling up to my crashed red Miata convertible. The only thought in my mind, I don't want to get a DUI. I went home and called the police and lied that someone had stolen my car from a party. When I hung up the phone, I just sat there in shock. Maybe God was talking to me. Oh yeah, I thought. Between herpes and a near-fatal car accident, God is so talking to me. A few days later, I went down to the police impound to claim my crushed vehicle. I walked toward the red wreck in awe. The car was half the size it was before the accident. That's how crushed it was. I reached inside to grab some of my things and noticed the tape player still had the cassette I had popped in before the wreck. It ejected out and I jumped back. The song that was playing during the accident was Last Chance by Duran Duran. I had no idea. God was definitely talking to me. So that's the end of chapter 13. I guess whenever I have time, we'll go into chapter 14 and beyond until we get to the end of the book. Now I'm going to look at the chat, so just give me one moment while I grab my tablet, okay? All right, let's see what y'all are saying. And remember, as I said at the very start of this stream today, Shelley's only critics are individuals who are linked to organized crime groups who have the agenda of profiting from sex trafficking rings that are linked to groups that cater to pedophiles. Just something to think about before you listen to anyone who has anything negative to say about her, aside from the 3 negatives or mistakes that I mentioned. All right, let's see. Oh, Corinne's in here. I'm sorry, Corinne. Hey, Corinne. Hello, Ken McDonald. Someone's looking to silence me so they can be removed and banned. Must be somebody linked to the pedophile rings. Not a surprise. Not a surprise at all. And no, this book is not inappropriate. This book is actually a historical document that is meant to warn about sex trafficking. Why you would want to not warn people about sex trafficking? The only reason I can think of is that you are someone who's seeking to harm minors, which most likely makes you a pedophile, doesn't it? Someone's saying I'm trying to get donations. Where in the stream did I ask for any donations? Where in the description of this stream is there a link for donations? Nowhere. You're a liar. Yes, she did pass away. Someone named Breezy asked what became of her. Did she pass away? Yes, she did. And the circumstances of her death are unclear. You have to look at who she was up against, what she was saying. Not a good situation. All right, whoever this individual, the real Cynthia is not who they claim to be. It's not even a female. It's very obvious. No, there were fake details put out. Rylan, you don't belong in here. Go back to wherever it is that you belong. All right. Well, that's about it. Nothing but trolls trying to oppress and suppress and discredit her message for the most part in my chat. Surprise, surprise. Not. Have a good night, everybody. Take care. Hopefully tomorrow I will have a chance to do an art production stream. Hopefully. I plan to do it outdoors, actually. I feel like making art outside rather than inside. All right, take care. Have a good night. Goodbye.